Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Ripp, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Ripp live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.
Maybe it hadn't been great in your bank account, maybe hasn't been great in your job, but you just make it work. We're certainly not really interested in the sacrifices required for that better life that might be possible. Like, oh, you mean I have to pay off my debt? That sounds like a lot of work. No, I'm good. And then the pandemic hit. Hey y'all, welcome to the Christy Wright Show. Today, we are talking about managing your money. Now, we've been working through the core of confidence, talking about your spirit, mind, body, your relationships, and your resources. And of course, your resources include your time, your money, and even your energy. Last week, we talked all about managing your time, and today, we're going to talk about managing your money. And we actually have some good news, believe it or not, that is coming out of this pandemic when it comes to managing our money, and I'm going to talk about that as well. But first, let's dive into what it means to manage your money. Now, I got to tell you from experience that I have made some massive mistakes with money. Growing up, my mom never really sat me down and intentionally taught me how to live within your means or how to not take out debt, any of those things. It was just kind of, we just made it up as we went, like a lot of people do. The only problem is, Mom didn't tell me no very often. She didn't. We weren't rich by any means, and I wasn't spoiled by any means. But if I wanted something, I just never really heard the word no very often. That led to some problems when I got older. Because when I was out of college and on my own, I didn't understand the word no. I didn't understand that you had to make choices with your money, that you had to live within your means, that you had to set a budget or not take out debt for things that you couldn't afford. So I just bought stuff. I continued to live however I wanted to live and live in a house with some girls that was more expensive than I could afford on my entry-level salary in a nonprofit job. I had credit cards. I had personal lines of credit. I had medical bills that were stacking up because the reality is I was living way outside of my means. Well, this went on for several years of me barely getting by, several years of getting paid on Friday and having to pay all of that money backwards to past debts and payments, several years of still calling my mom, asking her to put money in my bank account because I couldn't make it to the next payday. There was one day that I'll never forget. It was one day when I was around 24 years old, and I had to call my mom yet again to ask her to put money in my bank account because I couldn't make it to the next payday, and I just was so fed up. I didn't even know who Dave Ramsey was at this time. I just knew I couldn't live like this. I knew that I wanted nothing more in my life than the dignity of paying for my own lifestyle, my own expenses, my own bills. I wanted that sense of independence that every person in their 20s wants. And I wasn't independent at all. I was completely dependent on my mom. I wasn't a grown-up, whatever that means. I was a child living on her mom's paychecks. And something in me changed that day. I decided that I was going to do something different. I decided I was going to work really, really hard to get out of debt. I didn't have a plan. I hadn't read the Total Money Makeover. I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew something needed to change. And that day, I wrote down every single debt that I have. I still remember sitting on my bed, laying all the bills out, and the fear I felt at facing it. And it was around $24,000 between the medical bills, the personal lines of credit, all of that, the car loan. It was around $24,000. Now, that doesn't sound like that much money if you're a grown-up and you have lots of debt. But to me, at 24, when I was making not even $30,000 a year before taxes, that seemed insurmountable. How would I ever pay off this debt? Well, I tackled it like you tackle anything, one tiny step at a time. I think it was right around my very last debt, which is my car loan that I was paying off when I was introduced to Dave Ramsey. And that gave me that last final push, that last momentum to pay off that biggest debt. And then exactly 1 week before I got engaged to my husband, Matt, I became debt-free. I made that final payment. And I cannot ever forget how that felt to feel that free. To know that when I got paid on Friday, I was going to actually get to keep my money. To go into engagement with my future husband at the time, completely debt-free, without that baggage coming with me, without that fear hanging over my head. But y'all, I lived in that fear and that shame and that frustration for years. I remember what it's like to be sitting at the restaurant with friends and hand them my credit card and be so nervous, heart racing, palm sweating that server was going to come back and tell me that my card was declined because I'd maxed it out in front of all my friends. I remember going to the grocery store and being so scared that the card would not be approved. I remember getting paid and not even having enough money for the next few weeks because all that money was already allocated for all those past bills. That was more than I could even afford to stay afloat. I remember that fear. I remember that shame. I remember how discouraging and defeating that felt. And what's so sad that I see still today is so many people live like that. So many people still live just getting by. They don't even consider that there's another way. They don't even consider that you could be debt-free. They don't even consider that you could live a life without payments. They don't even consider that you could, wait for it, pay for a car in cash. And not because you're rich and you just have so much money or someone just gives you a car, but because you work and you plan and you save because you own it, because you can. They don't even consider that you could go through life without a FICO score, that you could go through life without a credit card. Yeah. Do you know? Fasten your seatbelt. It's going to get crazy. I don't have a credit card. Really? If you open my wallet, which is right over there off screen, there's not a credit card in it. There's a debit card, which has cash in the bank, the amount of cash that I have, but there's not a credit card. And I travel all over the country, speaking and teaching and traveling with my family and traveling with friends. I travel. You can do what you need to do with the debit card. But we have been sold this lie that the only way to build wealth, to be successful, to get ahead is with credit cards, with points, with FICO scores. And we have all bought this lie and we're all paying for it every single payday. When those checks are being written, those automatic drafts are being taken out to all the past payments and bills. We don't even consider that there's a different way to live. But I want to tell you that there is. I want to tell you that you don't have to struggle with your money forever. You don't have to barely get by. You don't have to feel fear when you hand someone your card. You don't have to fear payday, that paycheck is not going to cover the bills you already have. You could actually live in a world where when you get paid on Friday, you get to keep that money. You get to keep it. It just changes everything about your life. You have to decide that you're going to do something different. You have to have that moment that I had that day when I was 24 and say, never again. I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm not going to depend on credit cards. I'm not going to be sinking in debt up to my eyeballs. Never again. I'm going to do something different. You got to get mad and you got to get fired up, because I love how Dave Ramsey says you can wander into debt, but you cannot wander out. You have to get fired up and mad and care more about your future and your family and your dreams than you do about having that one shirt or jacket or couch or TV or whatever today. You have to think long-term, not short-term. You have to make a decision to change your life. But when you do, you will change your life. You will not only change your life, you will change your entire family tree. My children will not make the mistakes that I've made. They will learn growing up of how to live on a budget. They make commission with chores even at home right now. They understand when we go to the store, if I have this much money in my little kid envelope, this is how much money I have to spend. They're going to have a completely different experience than I had, because they're going to learn. I have changed my entire family tree. And I think one of the things that makes this so hard for us, aside from the fact that we get into these habits and behaviors, but we have some weird feelings around money, don't we? Like, especially as Christians, if you're a believer listening to this or watching this, like, we've got some weird squirmy feelings around money. We feel like money is evil. It makes you a bad person. I just want to remind you, I want to set the record straight. Money is not evil. Money is amoral. It means that it's not good and it's not bad. It's like a brick, for example. You look at the brick, you're like, oh, that's such a nice brick. Oh, it's a friendly brick. Or, oh, that's a mean brick. I hate that brick. It's just a brick. But when you put it in the hands of a person, it can be used for good or used for bad. You can build a building, a home, an orphanage with that brick, and that is used for good. You could take that brick and throw it through someone's car windshield. That's bad. The brick didn't decide, by the way. It's just a brick. The person that had the brick decided how it was used, and money is the same way. People think all the time that rich people are evil and wealthy people are evil, but you know what? I know a lot of people that are wealthy and crazy generous. I see the difference that they're making in our world with that wealth. And I know some people that don't have a lot of money and they're jerks. The amount of money does not determine the character of the person. The character of the person determines how any amount of money is used. So we have to get over this idea that there's only one way to live. We have to live in debt. We have to have credit cards. We have to have a FICO score. And if we try to earn money, oh my gosh, we're evil. We're going to be outcast because we're terrible people. Money's amoral. It's also, by the way, as a side note, the common denominator of everything you want to do in your lifetime. It is a tool for your life. Think of anything you want to do. Think of any goal you want to set. You want to get married? Weddings are expensive. You want to have kids? Kids are real expensive. You want to travel? That's expensive. Want to run marathons? That costs money. Entry fees, shoes, all of that. You want to build wells in Africa? Guess what that costs? Money. It costs money. Everything you want to do requires money. It's the common denominator of everything you want to do. So it is a tool. If we don't learn how to manage it, the lack of it will always manage us. I love how Zig Ziglar says, money isn't the most important thing in life, but it's pretty close to oxygen on the gotta have it scale. So we gotta have it. We've gotta have it. So let's figure out how to manage our money in a way that brings glory to God and makes the life we want possible. And I know that sinking in debt and barely getting by is not the life you want. I know that living paycheck to paycheck is not the life that you want. I know you want something better for yourself and your family. Decide that today is that day for you. Decide that today is that day. Never again. You're never looking back. You're not going to live paycheck to paycheck. You're not going to keep sinking in debt. You're not going to keep living outside your means. You're going to take control right now, today. And you're going to change your life and your family's life as a result of it. I know that you can. And I can't wait to watch you win. All right, y'all, I want to share an article with you that I saw recently, and here's the headline. Americans are hoarding cash. Savings rate hits its highest level since 1981. Now, I think we can all come to the conclusion of why this is happening with the pandemic and the economy, but this is a really important topic in light of what we're talking about when it comes to managing your money. And there's some really interesting principles that I think we can pull out of this new statistic. So here's the opening line. It says, Americans are so nervous about the state of the economy that they are stashing cash in the bank at a rate not seen since the first year of Ronald Reagan's presidency. Savings rate are up 13.1% in March, up from 8% in February. And this is the highest savings rate since November of 1981. Americans had $2.17 trillion in savings that month. Now, here's what's interesting. The article goes on to talk about how, well, it's possibly because people are nervous and they're preparing for the next recession, and that might be true. It might be true that we think a recession is coming and we're getting prepared, but here's what I think is going on as well. There is a fear component to this that I think we can learn from. Now, I don't know about you, but I have fear about different things in my life. Fear of, getting rejected so I don't put myself out there, or fear of what someone else thinks so I don't post that thing, or I don't have that hard conversation. Fear something bad's going to happen, and so I, play small and shrink back. And I love to teach you about this idea of pushing past your fear. Do it scared. The antidote to fear is action, all that stuff. There's an important question we have to ask ourselves when it comes to savings or anything in life. When is it fear that we should push past and do it scared? And when is it wisdom? When is that voice inside of us actually wisdom saying, hey, don't go down that path, it's dangerous. Hey, you saw how that decision turned out, didn't turn out well. Let's learn from that and not make that mistake again. When I look at this article, maybe there's a fear of the next recession and people are scared, but I think what it really is wisdom. See, we've had this wake up call during the pandemic like nothing we've ever experienced in our generation. It's this moment of everything has been going along fine. Maybe it hadn't been great in your bank account. Maybe it hasn't been great in your job. Maybe it hasn't been, great in your finances, but you just make it work. It's familiar. It's a habit. We're used to paying the bills. We're used to spending the credit card. Oh, it's maxing out. So I guess we need to pay it down a little bit. And we, 2 steps forward, 10 steps back. And we're just used to operating that way. We don't question it. We don't consider there could be another way. We're certainly not really interested in the sacrifices required for that better life that might be possible. Like, oh, you mean I have to pay off my debt? Oh, you mean I have to live on less than I make? Like, oh, that sounds hard. That sounds like a lot of work. No, I'm good. I'm good with my credit cards. I'm good with just getting by. I'm good. And then the pandemic hit. And all of our structures, all of the things that we thought made us feel safe, all of the things that we thought were stable, the rug was pulled out from underneath us. And we had this moment of a wake-up call, realizing that bad things can happen. Emergencies can happen. Things that you did not plan for, could have never seen coming in a million years. A job that was previously stable is now having furloughs and layoffs and businesses that are closing. And I'm not saying this to highlight it to bring fear to you that makes you scared or makes you anxious. I'm highlighting it to say, we had a wake-up call moment that we can learn from. We had a wake-up call moment that gives us an opportunity to do something different. Until you really have a reason to do something different, you're not going to do anything different. Until something changes in your situation or you change your mind, nothing's going to change. You're just going to keep getting by. You're going to keep living paycheck to paycheck. You're going to keep using the credit cards and sort of paying them down and never paying them off and then spending more whenever you need to because that's how you're used to operating. And one of the things that the pandemic created in our world is a new perspective. It created an opportunity not just to rethink how you live your calendar and think about your to-do list and your commitments and what your normal is. It created an opportunity for you to think about how you manage your money. Because I'll tell you how I used to operate when it came to money. Aside from making mistakes and racking up debt and all of that stuff, which I've talked about, I also used to have this idea, and maybe you have had it too, maybe you still have it, that if you have the money, you can afford it. Well, I have the money, so I can spend it. You go shopping, there's a cute jacket. Well, I've got the money. There was no reason to not buy something if you had the money. Now, here's the really simple conclusion that I think we need to acknowledge if that's the way you operate with your money. If you operate and you live your life with your finances from the belief and the foundation of, if I have the money, there's no reason not to buy the thing, you will never have any money. Let that just sink in your spirit there for a second. If you're managing your money from the perspective of, if you have it, there's no reason not to buy it, and there's infinite things to buy, infinite things you want, infinite things you need. I hear you. I get it. I've been there. But if your only decision-making framework or filter is if the money's physically in your account, then there will never be any money in your account. You will always spend every dime you have because you've got the money. I had this aha moment when I was in my mid-20s. This was when I was paying off my debt and learning a new way to operate to manage my money. It was this aha moment of, just because I have the money doesn't mean I need to spend it. What? That's crazy. I just let it sit there. Just let it sit there. Let it collect dust or interest or what. Just sit there. Just sit there and build up and grow and save. And then here's what's so fascinating. Once I learned to operate this way and I would go out and I would see the cute leather jacket, I didn't just ask myself, well, I've got the money, I should buy it. I asked myself, is that more important than having the money? Because it feels pretty good to have some money. I have had a bank account that was negative and overdrawn. I have had a bank account that's zero. I've had a bank account that's at 10 cents. And I've had a bank account that has a little bit of cushion. And it feels pretty good to have some cushion. Because you know what? When life happens, and it will, I can't explain the peace of mind that you feel in having that money to take care of you. When my son Conley was having seizures and we had to rush him to the Vanderbilt ER, I didn't care how much it cost because we had an emergency fund. When our air conditioning went out at our house and we had to pay $5,000 to get a whole new unit, it hurt. It wasn't fun. Because let's be honest, no one's excited about a new AC unit. Didn't really change your life. It's not like you built a new deck that you get to enjoy in the summer. No, you just still have cold air. That is a blessing, I understand, but it wasn't a super fun purchase to just keep your cold air. But we had the money. And the only reason we had the money is because we had savings. And the only reason we had savings is because we understand that just because that you have the money doesn't mean you have to buy it. Just because you have the money doesn't mean you have to spend it. And I realize how unbelievably simple that concept is. But if you would apply that to your life, to your habits, to your bank account, it will change your life. It will change how you spend because you no longer spend it just because you have it. It will change your bank account number because those numbers will start to grow. You let that money sit there. It's not even about collecting interest, y'all. This is not a long-term plan. I'm not talking about investments. I'm talking about just having an emergency fund, just having a cushion where your rock bottom isn't zero. Maybe your rock bottom is a different number. That's some cushion between you and life, you and air conditioning units, you and your child having to go to the ER, you and a pandemic and a job loss, having some cushion and an emergency fund. I love how Dave Ramsey says, when you have an emergency fund, it turns an emergency into an inconvenience because you have to transfer the money from your savings. It's not panic. It's not anxiety ridden. It changes everything about how you manage your money and how you experience those things that happen when life happens. So I don't know what your savings account is right now. Only you do. But I want to encourage you to put this simple thing into practice. Let the pandemic be an aha moment for you. Let it be a wake-up call that this is an opportunity to actually save some money, to actually put some money in your bank account, in your regular checking account, in your savings account, in both, and just let that money sit there. And remind yourself next time you go out and you see some new, shiny, sparkly thing that's just so cute and you just got to have it. Remind yourself that just because you have the money doesn't mean you have to spend it. All right, y'all, I want to spend a few minutes diving into scripture. And believe it or not, the Bible has a lot to say about money. There's a specific verse I want to share with you, and it's one that isn't used all that often, but I think it's really important in light of our conversation. This is Proverbs 21:20. And I'm going to read you the NIV translation, but then I'm going to read you another translation as well. In the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil, but a foolish man devours all he has. There's another translation that says, the wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. I think it's really interesting, especially as we've been talking about the practical side of saving and managing our money, that it is really tempting to just spend whatever you make. Whatever's in your bank account, if you've got it, you can spend it. And I love how this shines a light and says, the wise man or woman saves for the future. The wise man or woman has stores of choice food and oil. The wise man or woman saves, has a cushion, has some extra stored away for a rainy day, to give, to bless someone, for an emergency, for a job loss, for anything. There is wisdom in saving. There's wisdom in planning. There's wisdom in preparing. There's wisdom there. You know, I have a lot of different beliefs about money that I have had to undo growing up. I think there's a lot of negative teaching out there of what it means to be a good steward of your finances, especially in the church. But I think it's important as you look at scripture for the truth in God's word about what he says about money, what he says about this practical resource that we all have, that we've been entrusted with stewarding. What does he have to say about it? And what is true that we need to adopt in our daily practices? Maybe you have been holding yourself back because you believe that rich people are evil. You believe that saving or preparing for the future is not needed. It's not necessary. Maybe you grew up and it was just the way of life that everybody spent everything they had. Maybe you grew up and there was this strong belief system that if you made money and you were successful, you were a bad person. Maybe you grew up in the undercurrent of the belief around money was that money's evil. Not the love of money is evil, but money is evil. Maybe that just somehow sunk into your spirit, and so you've always self-sabotaged. You've not tried to be too successful, not tried to make too much money, not tried to save too much money, not tried to have too much money. Maybe you've got some beliefs there that are holding you back. I love this simple word in Proverbs. And like I said, the TLB version, the wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends whatever he gets. I want to be wise. I know you do too. I want to give you some questions to put this into practice and actually process it and let it sink into your spirit so that you can have actual change in your life, in your habits, and in your bank account. The first question is this: what were you taught about money growing up? What did you learn about money? Whether it was from your family or the culture or the church or a class you took. What are some of the beliefs around money that you learned growing up? Write down your answer. All right, the second question is more around feelings. So we first want to identify, what did you learn about money growing up? The second question is, how do you feel about it? Do you feel stressed, anxious, excited, motivated, overwhelmed? Maybe you hate it. Maybe you're like, oh, I just hate dealing with it. You hate the necessity of it. Write down your feelings around money. All right, the third question I want you to think about is, what stresses you out about money? Like, let's get really specific here. What stresses you out when it comes to your finances? Is it not having enough? Not knowing where to spend it, where to invest it, how to save it, how much to? Not knowing what to do next? Not knowing if you're doing the right thing? Those are just a few examples, but what is it for you? What are the things that stress you out when it comes to money? Write down your answer. And the last question is this: what would it take for you to make a change? What would it take? Do you have to hit rock bottom? Do you have to have an eye-opening experience, have an aha moment? Maybe you've already had that recently. What does it take for you to make a change when it comes to managing your money, saving, getting out of debt, taking control, finally taking control of your money? What's it going to take? Write down your answer. I heard someone say the other day, are you interested in that or are you committed to it? That's a good question. Are you interested in changing your bank account and your financial future, or are you committed to it? Because those are going to lead to very different results. I pray that this encourages you, and I'd love to pray for us as we wrap up. God, thank you that every single thing we have is already yours. Everything. We hold our lives with open hands, and that includes our bank account and every dollar that we have. Everything comes from you. Everything is a gift from you. And God, I know that every single person watching right now wants to do a good job in how we manage it. We want to do a good job with how we manage everything we have, including our finances, including our money, including our bank account, our income. God, I pray right now that you would give us the conviction and clarity of the changes we need to make. Show us our blind spots. Show us where we're making excuses. Show us where we are holding back. Show us where we have lies that we're believing that are not from you and not based in the truth of your word. God, show us where we need to make a change. Give us the courage to make that change. And God, I pray that you would provide for every single person watching as they make that change. I pray they experience ridiculous, crazy, awesome blessings on this journey to making a change. We're going to work like it all depends on us, and we're going to pray like it all depends on you. And we know in every area of our life, including our finances, it's going to take both. Thank you that you love us. Thank you that you love us enough to help us change. Thank you that you provide for us. And thank you that you care about this deeply important area of our lives, how it affects every other. And you want to get in there and you want to help us use it in a way that honors you. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you all so much for watching, and you can join us next week where we are continuing to talk about managing your resources. We've talked about your time, we've talked about your money, we're going to talk about managing your energy. Yeah, I'm even going to give you 5 steps to boost your energy because let's be honest, we all need a little bit more. I'll see you next week.
Mercy Me is coming to Pittsburgh, the Together Again tour with Mercy Me, Crowder, and special guest Andrew Rip, Thursday, October 5th. Bring your family and friends to the PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh for Mercy Me, Crowder, and Andrew Rip live in concert. 3 multiple award-winning artists on one stage for one night. Let your spirit soar, your heart sing, and your faith ignite. Mark your calendars for Thursday, October 5th. Get your tickets now at mercyme.org.